So this is my gaming setup as of right now that we moved into this new house. I've got, my glass display here, and I've got all this, I got my media shelf. The reason I have it set up the way that I have it set up right here, to where it's like my desk is facing outwards towards the rest of the room, is because look at this weird random pipe that sits out here in the middle of nowhere. I couldn't really press my desk up against that and put it over in the corner like you would think that you would do with an L-shaped desk like this. And I also didn't want to put it over here in this corner just because of this window. This window is pretty ugly looking, and yes, I could put a curtain over it, and I'm going to. But if my desk was right down here and I've got my monitor up against here, I'm going to be able to see up through that window, and I just don't really want that. It's not my preference, and it sucks because whoever lived here last had cords running through, so I would have been able to hide the cords a lot better. So, maybe I'm in the minority of people who would have wanted their desk to be over here. So I'm currently dealing with the fact that I still got this massive cord management job to do. And so I've got some ideas on how I'm going to tackle that. Maybe I'll do that in another video. But yeah, so what I'm going to do while I'm working on this, my first project that I want to do to tackle this setup to make it look nicer is I want to create a wall divider setup right up through here. Now, I thought about getting shelves. I measured up to here. It's about 58 inches up. I found a couple of shelves that went up to 58 inches. But by the end of the day, I was going to be paying about $160 to $200 to create a shelf up through here. And once I create the shelf setup, then I'll work on cord management. But what I decided to do is do something that I don't really recommend, just because it wouldn't be as easy and it would be more expensive. But the fact of the matter is I already had these boards. These boards I bought to create a shelf over my washer and dryer at one place that we lived. And we haven't found a use for them here at this house. So they've just been sitting in the storage unit. So I had an idea. What if I made this and turned it into a wall, which I'm going to either cover in this video or the next video. And essentially what I'm going to be doing is I got these plywood boards, and I'm going to be nailing them to the back of basically an archway that I'm going to create with these whiteboards. These whiteboards ended up costing me about $150. By the time I was done, it ended up being a way more expensive project than I expected, which is why I say I don't recommend it, just because I spent so much money on those 3 whiteboards alone. Now, I'm sure if you wanted to create something like I'm about to create, I'm sure you could find a cheaper, simpler method, like as far as going to Lowe's and finding a substitute for these boards, because I got these, and I mean, it's nice wood and it's already like pre-painted and everything, so that's why it was so expensive. But by the end of the day, I was faced with the question, do I want to spend $150 on shelves, or do I want to go to Lowe's and spend about $30 on plywood and hardware to kind of create my own thing? So stay tuned. I'm gonna go ahead and put this thing together, and we'll see how it turns out. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to find a stud, because we want to anchor it to the wall so that way my wall doesn't fall over. So I found myself a stud using Stud Finder and got one right behind here. I'm not going to do a how to find a stud tutorial. Sorry, you might want to look at somebody else's YouTube video for that. So then I found my hole. Now I'm going to measure where this is at on here, and once I measure that, I'm going to drill a hole through this. The reason I have this board in between here is I've got this frame down here, so this is going to kind of serve as a huge washer, essentially. This was an extra piece of plywood board that I had You can see where I just kind of like snapped off where I had too much of it. But it was extra plywood board from this. So we are going to use this as our washer to break the gap. So that way whenever I push this up against the wall, it will be flat up against the wall. Because like I said, that floorboard was going to cause a good amount of extra space. So now that I've drilled a hole in my board, what I did was I took a monkey hook just to use to help me make sure I'm finding a stud. And what I've done is I'm going to switch angles here. I've run it through all of my holes just to make sure that it was going to fit and that it actually connects perfectly. And my monkey hook does. So the reason I am doing it that way is to ensure that whenever I drill into the wall, I'm drilling exactly where I need to drill. So now I've got my screw I'm going to get in there, because you can see this thing is quite larger than the actual hole. So I want to make sure I'm not causing too much damage to my wall, especially if I end up finding that I made a mistake. So, well, I've got it in there now. And what I'm going to do is, you also want to make sure that when you're doing this, just, 101, is not to do it too extremely tight. You want to do it tight enough to where it's snug, but also you want to make sure it's on there solid. If you keep screwing, making sure it's in there super tight, you're going to strip your hole and it's not going to fit very well. So we are now anchored into the wall. I thought about doing more than one, but really I think just the one is going to be fine. The reason I'm going to stick with that, now honestly I'd rather be safe and do more than one, but there's not very many studs on this wall. So it was really a pain in the ass just to find this one stud. So instead of just putting in a whole bunch of holes into my wall, I'm just going to stick with the one. It's just there to make sure it doesn't fall backwards. And I'm giving it a nice good tug just to make sure that it can hold the weight. So now I am going on to connect the bridge, or like create the anchor. So I'm going to go get my other boards and show you how I do that. All right, so now I have this put together. Once I actually have these corners screwed together, that's when I'm going to start drilling holes around the edges here for my plywood. But first things first. So right now I'm noticing that there's a little bit of a gap. I think it might be that this thing's maybe a little too high when I first installed it, but I'm gonna wait and see how it looks once I've actually screwed this part in and have it all put together. If it's creating too much of a problem, then I will move on to completely unscrewing all of this and moving it down like a 1/4 inch, something like that, if that really creates an issue. But right now I literally just have it laying there. It's a good chance that maybe it's just not perfect. So what I'm doing right now is I'm ensuring that this is going to be perfectly straight. Right now it's not. So I'm going to make sure that this is perfectly straight. I have screwed in holes through here into here. I'm drilling holes in through here to here and making sure those are perfectly lined. And then I'm going to go through and actually screw it together. And you want to make sure you got wood screws for that, by the way. So I've got my screws in here, locking down the top board. You may want to make sure you got the proper screws and washers to make sure that it's actually screwed in there properly so it doesn't wiggle around or come loose. You can see I used like a little rubber piece. I was out of washer, so I had to use a rubber piece to kind of help it lock in. So right now we're going to go ahead and make sure that this is actually going to fit properly. It looks like I was a little off on my measurements, but that doesn't, I don't care. I'm going to be putting trim up here to make it look nicer. So yeah, you want to make sure that you're actually lining up these corners perfectly and also lining it up with the bottom board perfectly. So I'm going to go ahead and what I'm going to do is I'm going to drill from this board into these boards, and yeah, I'll let you see how it works out for me. Okay, so what I've done here is I've already gone down and I've sanded through this board, and now I'm using Kiehl's all-purpose interior primer, and I was recommended to get an oil base, which usually has a red instead of a blue can. And what this is going to do for us is it's going to go ahead and make it easier for the contact paper to stick to this board. So I'm going through, and as you can see, I've got my measurements off when I got this board cut. So I have a separate board right here where I'm going to board over this. So I'm painting it all separately and wallpapering it separately, and then we're going to go there. And then also you're going to want to make sure to put some plastic on the floor. That way you don't get any paint on the floor.
Now you said it was recommended that you get an oil-based one, but you did not get an oil-based one.
I did not get an oil-based one, but that's okay. Like it works for all surfaces, and it did include wood. I think the concern with not using an oil base is that it could make the wood bloat, because this is chip wood specifically. It could make the wood bloat, but I don't know anything about anything, so we'll see what happens once I actually put this down. Well, I finished putting primer on the wood. I was only able to kind of get half of this. I definitely did not buy enough paint to finish the job, but at least I had already like spray painted that black. So, and honestly, I'm only worried about covering the above part of my desk. So, it's not a big deal. So the next step while I'm waiting for this to dry is to go ahead and put on the wallpaper next. And yeah, you'll just simply follow the instructions. I bought this off of Amazon, and you can see there that it already has sticky stuff. So it's self-adhesive, should be able to stick on there pretty good. I'm a little bit worried about this side and how it turns out, just because I was running so low on paint. I mean, that's a crap job. All right. But hopefully it's enough paint to help it to stick. That's all I'm concerned about. I just really wish I had started off with the side that I felt was more important, because this side is going to be covered up. I just wanted to try to paint it as much as possible, because chipwood is smelly, and this paint kind of helps mask the smell. So we shall see how this turns out after the next step. It's going to be kind of hard to film myself while putting this up, so I'll show you what it looks like when I'm all done. All right, so we put the wallpaper up. I know it looks like a crap job, and that's partly because it is kind of a crap job, but it will all come together in the end. I'm still need to go buy trim and put trim up along the edges here, and we've got our primer in the center. That's all going to get covered up, but here's the finished product on this side. Now I'm still going to get a cord cover for those. I've got some spare cord covers. I just need to actually get them. So once I get the spare cord covers, I'll deal with that. But honestly, cord covers and cord management, totally different video. But yep, so now just to get the tapestries up. I've already lined up my tapestries to see exactly how I want it looking once I get it up there. All right, so the tapestry is now up. Now I know it looks like I hid the E, but AliExpress didn't print me one. So, figured I'd have that one covering over the Expedition rather than the other way around. So, all that's left for me now is to go ahead and put some trim up through there and on the sides, and yeah, we'll be good. So here we are, ladies and gentlemen, the finished product. We got the trim up all the way to the sides, all the way down to the bottom. You can see that the wallpaper is perfectly hidden now. I got my Attack on Titan poster up and Spawn poster up on the side. It's looking real slick. I'm very happy with it. So let me know what you all think. Did I do a good job? Did I do a shit job? Would you do this to your gaming setup? I'd love to know what you think. If you'd like to see more content like this, let me know in the comments section. Have a great day.